All right, you guys. I'm in front of the SEC. There's a truck here. You can't really see all of the videos. His boss just came up with another truck, so that hasn't been there the whole time. But I'm in front of the SEC, and I hope someone in the office behind this sees this video. I hope Ann Wagner's office sees this video. I hope there's a journalist somewhere that sees this video. I would even hope Donald Trump sees this video. The U.S. security markets are all riven with counterfeit shares. The entire securities market is fraud. And how is this? This is because under Regulation Show, which was promulgated in, I think, 2008, the whole idea was to get rid of this stuff. It just made it worse. There's 4 tickets in the United States if you're a broker. Institutional, retail, you do your own trades. Buy stock, you pay cash. Sell stock, you own it, it's in your account. Sell stock short, you borrow it, you locate it, you pay fees, and there's some little bit of intellectual questions you can have on that, but basically you're selling stock that exists. And then there's 4. You can sell stock you do not own, you do not locate, you do not borrow, you do not deliver, the broker-dealer does not ask for receipt, all under the auspices of a market maker exemption in Regulation Show. This is a truck. You see the trucks? This is what criminals on Wall Street, if you define criminal as people who break U.S. securities laws. But these guys don't enforce those laws, so they don't think they're criminals, maybe. But the SEC, is the SEC complicit? Has the SEC created this? Or are they is that office full of a bunch of uneducated, stupid graduates of Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Notre Dame, William and Mary? Is that what it is? I submit to you that this is all a strategy that's on purpose. Okay. First point that brings up. If that's true, that they're part of it, then under Regulation FD, just like the cigarette packs you buy have a picture of a black and lung, every statement you receive from a brokerage firm, every time you turn on your online banking, every time you get a solicitation from a financial firm, every mutual fund, every ETF, every money manager, it should have a stamp on those communications that say, with a picture of a black lung, that say investing causes cancer. Investing kills. It should say that if you invest in United States securities markets, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission does not enforce settlement. Since 2006 it hasn't, and it never will. So if you put up your cash, you don't know if you've bought shares. What's going on? What's going on? I think what's going on in all the markets, if you look globally, the big stocks, the middle cap stocks, the small stocks, is that the bankers have transferred a model of the fractional reserve commercial banking system where you can expand the dollars in existence and the economy grows almost ad infinitum, although we're probably reaching limits of that in this economic cycle, whether you counted 80 years or the last 44-year bull market. I don't know. But what they're doing is they're doing that in the security system. They're turning the United States security system into a fractional reserve custodial of security system, or a fractional reserve security system. The problem with it? Governance. Dollars are interchangeable, they're fungible. But securities, shares, they're not. How does the CEO sign a release every quarter? He or she does not know how many shares are out there. But I think it's done so that firms like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and etc. can expand their assets under management. They can charge annual fees, they can charge percentages of profits. Their stock loan desks, according to Patrick Byrne in Goldman Sachs' case, it was something like 80%, 86% of their revenue and 76% of their profit. He said Goldman Sachs is a stock loan desk with the name of an investment bank on their door. It's profitable. This river of money is so profitable, it buys the SEC, it corrupts FINRA, it corrupts Adena Friedman's firm, NASDAQ, it corrupts OTC Markets, Charles Cromwell, or whatever his name is. It even corrupts Ann Wagner's office. She buys the line that she should not pursue an audited trade trail, confirmation trail, blue sheets, because it invades the privacy of these criminals. She's from the show me state. She's bought. Congress has bought, journalists have bought, the 6 outlets for news in this country, if you look it up, are controlled by BlackRock. I believe that's the case. So these big pools of money, they have no hope. Like, I think it's BlackRock, it has 10 trillion under management. How do they get 14% year in and year out? Either it's a bubble economy and all assets keep growing at a level that's impossible, or they cheat. They set up funds offshore. They get guys like Jeff Easton to be the front. Jeff Easton's job is to go ensnare CEOs in finger motion, in KNW, in Vocal or CRTD as recent examples. He gets them to sign a toxic convertible note. It has all sorts of definitions, but the key is this. The boys out of Toronto, like the Anson funds or elsewhere, start shorting the stock. They start selling into existence stock that does not exist, much like the banking system sells money into existence as they loan you money for your credit cards or for your mortgage or for your car. They're taking this model to the banking system. The problem is these guys don't enforce a level playing field. The man in charge here is worth $125 million because of his association with Goldman Sachs and the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton campaign, sorry. He's not going to enforce it. So anyway, what happens in the smaller cap markets, the sort of under $1 billion, under $10 stock markets, the over-the-counter market, the joke that Adena Friedman has allowed the NASDAQ to become, the joke that Charles Cromwell, or whatever the triple C's in his name at OTC Markets has become. If you're a small company, and you're an older guy like me, you remember a time that you could go public, you could raise money from friends and family, you could go to a small fund, you could go to an investment bank, you could go to a brokerage firm, and you could grow. American dream. This creates jobs in local communities for all, minorities, women, gays, straights, atheists, God-fearing people, immigrants, hoity-toity, down on the luck. It creates jobs for everybody. It creates tax revenue for local governments, state governments, and the federal government. It is the core of the American dream. These guys don't enforce the rules. They allow the cheating because they're in on it. Goldman Sachs should be ashamed Gary Gensler should be ashamed every time he says hello to his family as if he's done a good job. He hasn't. Adina Friedman, as she cashes $2 million a month, should be embarrassed. The over-the-counter markets, Cromwell and the rest, with all their big smiles, they should be ushered out of those offices and it should start again. But anyway, what happens? Here's what happens, and I don't know if Donald Trump would listen to this, but maybe Devin Nunes. Here's what happens. Wall Street has consolidated in basically 4 firms. Merrill Lynch, which is Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, UBS, and Wells Fargo. And I might have left out some regionals that have consolidated. But basically these big wirehouses used to have competition from beautiful firms out there, like Alex Brown, like Laidlaw, like Montgomery Securities, like Johnston Lemon, like Ferris Baker Watts, like Tucker Anthony, like Sutro & Co. All over the country, these smaller firms, what did they have? They had research. They had investment banks, bankers, I wanted to say. They had trading desks. They had brokers. They would have squawk calls. They would have research calls. The firms would educate their clients about stocks, and the brokers, who were all now called wealth advisors, would relay those ideas to their clients. Now what it is, everything's about assets under management. Every wealth advisor may as well be an insurance agent. It's just about getting assets under management, giving it to BlackRock, giving to Vanguard, giving it to Ken Griffin, giving it to Citadel, giving it to Fidelity to so-called manage. These guys will tell you that investors should stay out of the over-the-counter market. Well, they're right now. But what they do, their real paymasters, what their real paymasters do now, the big banks, what they do now is help counterfeit shares, destroy stocks by selling into existence billions, if not trillions of shares which don't exist. You can look up MMTLP over 600 days. The rumors are there's 2.5 billion shares sold that don't exist from Torchlight, MMAT, and MMTLP. They want to blame the investors, but there's no level playing field. They want to blame the CEOs. And sure enough, some CEOs are either idiots, afraid of hard work, or they're in on it. But the CEO shouldn't have to do the work of the SEC. Shouldn't have to do the work. The goal of the real paymasters of Gary Gensler and his squad is, in other words, the funds, the offshore funds, your funds that you invest in retirement accounts. They try to get you, hold your money there, hold it there, don't change it, let us manage it. They lend out stock that doesn't exist, they sell stock that doesn't exist, they suppress prices. There's no price discovery anymore in U.S. markets, particularly in stocks under $1 billion. No price discovery. If a company needs capital, where do they go? I'll talk about that in a minute if I remember. But what they do is all of you have, I think, heard of supply and demand. Economics 101. Prices go up when there's more demand than supply. Prices go down when there's more supply and demand. The SEC allows the bastardization of stock prices, particularly in the small cap stocks, by their clients, the criminals, their paymasters, the one that gives them jobs. They want a job at Gibson Dunn. They want a job at Goldman Sachs. They better go along with it. They spin out 2 years and they have that job. They don't look too closely. This has disastrous consequences for the United States of America's economic engine. But they suppress price by increasing supply. Now, these same important people will say, well, investors shouldn't speculate on that imbalance of supply and demand. Well, in every economics book and every theory, if supply and demand gets out of whack, it snaps the other direction. Why shouldn't investors be able to bet when the criminals destroy a price by massive amounts of selling and endless selling of shares which don't exist? If they sense that this is going the other way, why shouldn't they buy and try to benefit from the upside? They call it speculation. I called what the others do. It's not speculation what the criminals do. It's a guaranteed profit because they go along with breaking the law. Okay, let's go to the markets. It used to be that you had brokers who would learn about stocks, pitch the stocks to their clients. It used to be you had research. It used to be you had investment banks. It used to be you had real market makers. There aren't any anymore. Don't buy the crap that Ken Griffin tells you. He's not doing anybody a service. He's just greedily getting in front of all the orders. Why, for example, Mr. Trump, Congressman Wagner, why do you need high-frequency trading in stocks that trade by appointment? Why do you need it? It's just to cheat. So anyway, you used to have research. You used to have follow-up. If good news came out, you would have a research report. The company would go on a road trip. Stockbrokers, which are now called wealth advisors, would recommend the stock, and you'd have, and institutions, and you'd have stocks go up. What was the benefit of that? Well, if a company had strength and their share price maybe got ahead of itself, they could use the stock price as currency to go buy a competitor, to go buy talent. Maybe they could use it just to do an offering to put cash in their treasury, but it was on the company, not on these criminals. Now what the criminals do, unfortunately, there is no functioning. Gary Gensler says we have the deepest capital formation markets in the country. He's either a complete fool or he's lying or he's paid off. We don't have that anymore. And it's not Gary. You put Virginia Countrywide in his place, she's going to do the same thing. This is systemic. This is industrial scale theft from the United States economy. No taxes are paid, and I'll say that in a minute. And the money goes offshore. It gooses the profits of the big pools of money. These handful of white men, and they have other ways you can measure them, collect the money. Maxine Waters doesn't care, and Wadiger doesn't care, and journalists don't care. Nobody cares, because the people that are hurt are just normal, regular guys and girls. They can't pick up the phone and talk to Ann Wagner. Ken Griffin can. They can't pick up the phone and talk to Gary Gensler, whoever is running it now, Blankenfield or whatever is running Goldman Sachs, can call Gary Gensler. David Flink can call Robert Cook if he deigns to, probably call Gensler. We can't. We don't have a champion. So anyway, these companies can't raise capital. They can't raise capital. So ironically, a guy like Jeff Easton, whose sole qualification for being a big shot is he used to day trade Yahoo. But what he's good at is being a front for hedge funds who sell stock in quantity that never ends, that doesn't exist. They sell it into existence, cheating America. Jeff Easton is the front. He creates the documents. He didn't come up with this himself. He was taught how to do this. The documents ensnare the CEO, and it never ends. And then you get lawyers that are good. They get that that deal reversed, for example, Power Up Lending lent a company $72,000. They deducted expenses, and they did it at an original discount. The most they can make on that is nothing, but they lived the high life. Same with Jeff Easton. These financings cannot pay Madison Avenue rent, much less all the fake smiles on their website before they took it down. They're making a kickback from Gary Gensler's real paymasters, Goldman Sachs, Vanguard, others who cheat with offshore funds, and it's all hidden. It's all algorithmic, it's all computers, and there's not even a chance for investors to make money. And you say, well, just put it in ETF, put it in a fund. So investors settle for maybe 5 or 8%, while these geniuses strip mine it. They strip mine the equity markets for hundreds, 200s, 500s of percent. It's almost in infinity when they seller box it. All right, what's the goal of the criminals? The goal is to ensnare the CEO in these financings. And remember, the CEO can't go to an investment bank anymore. Can't go to a brokerage firm. Can't go to a small institution. Why? The Merrill Lynch rule. Lawyers tell the brokerage houses, don't allow clients to buy a stock under $5 or under $7 or under $500 million market cap. There are no natural buyers. No natural buyers. So they don't do the financings because you make less money on a $20 million financing. Why not do a $2 billion one? So there's no natural buyers. There's no capital raised. None. So these guys, ironically, the arbitrage that Jeff Easton illegally provides is that as soon as a company calls up, like a Vocal, and the CEO of that is friends with Jeff Easton, I think. But as soon as he calls up, Jeff says, hey, it has the right volume. We don't care what it does. He calls his 4 hedge funds, and the hedge funds start shorting the stuff and shorting it and selling it and selling it. Can you prove this, William? Can you prove it? No. Can you prove Pablo Escobar, how much cocaine he brought into the country every year by going to a customs agent at JFK? No, they do it in the dark. But anyway, as soon as that's sold, this front, the Lynn Partners out of New York City, supposedly raises this money. No, they don't. The clients have shorted it. You're just giving the CEO her own money back. The stock's been crushed, but you do it with a toxic formula. And those shares are newly issued sitting at the transfer agent. And then the lawyers sign something that gets the prime brokers saying, okay, every box is checked. And Gary Gensler doesn't care. He doesn't look it over the counter. He just does not care. Adina Friedman doesn't care. So the CEO, if there were a functioning market, could have sold her own shares in the market, but she can't. So instead, the criminals sell the shares, driving the price down, that don't exist. They don't exist. It's against the law. And then they give that cash, because they're big funds and cash is fungible. They give that cash to the CEO at a massive 30–40% down. And then they lock her into a contract that allows them to gives money based on the lowest share price for the last 20 days, minus 25, minus 30%. Okay, Gary Gensler, Donald Trump, if you're listening, what's #1 thing other than full disclosure that this is what's going on? Get rid of these toxic notes. Second thing, have the SEC goes after CEOs. They don't go after investment banks. They don't go after law firms. They go after CEOs. Tell the CEOs they'll go to jail if they sign one of these toxic convertible notes. They're not hard to understand. Those two changes would change everything right away. And Wagner, you could push for the consolidated audit trail and make that public. FINRA, you apparently, according to the apologists, you make a list every day of the reg show failures or the failed to delivers, failed to locates. But according to the apologists, you never put up when they close those positions. Well, why don't we make all that information public? Why don't you make the failed to delivers public every single day? When an offering, a secondary offering is done, like look up KNW. Right now, KNW through Lynn Partners is receiving money from benchmark securities at a lower price. The shorts, the counterfeiters will just come in, cross that stock through the front. They close out their position and they have a profit. They can make money. They take the juice out of the lemon before the company can make its lemonade. And then the company executives might as well work at Walmart. How does that hurt the country, Donald Trump? I'm not lecturing you. I'm hoping you somehow you ever see this, or one of your aides does. And it's happening in your stock, DJT. What the goal of these criminals, it's not the SEC, it's who they represent in the law firms like Gibson Dunn, who's on both sides of these things. Their goal is to seller box the stock, get it down to 0.0001. No bid, tiny ass. They can trade that all day long, and then the company never can raise capital. Why do they want it there? Because they can get the money out of the prime broker that they counterfeited into existence. They stole from the American people. They can get it out. Because the maintenance requirements reduce, because the prime broker knows there's very little risk that that will ever come and bite the prime broker in the butt. Secondly, they give this myth that it's important to be on NASDAQ. NASDAQ is just a gold coated abattoir, just like the over-the-counter markets. It's just a nicer experience before they slice the neck of the shareholders. But once you're on the NASDAQ, if it goes below $1, oh my gosh, you've got to do something because you're going to lose your standing. You're going to come out of this slaughterhouse called the NASDAQ. You better do a reverse split. So then they do a reverse split, and it's too long to go on here, but you can do it with the arithmetic. If you have to maintain $5 a share at your prime broker for stock that's yet to be closed, and you do a 500-for-1 reverse split, as Jeff Lynn's client Vocal did, imagine how much money they can take out. And by the way, there's no closing transaction. There's no taxes paid. So while the government goes after waitresses and Venmo transactions, why don't they go after the trillions, that's with a T, trillions of dollars that are taken offshore without paying taxes? Bankruptcy is another thing. No closing transaction. All right, let's move on. Let's move on. I want to end this. I told you about how they do a secondary and then it's just the shorts covering. What I didn't get into is these are just pressure valve releases, these notes. Once they get all the paperwork filled out and the shortings happened, it's like that old commercial, help me, I've fallen, I can't get up. Once the stock is under the massive avalanche, regardless of the note being covered, the selling continues. They control it. Now they control things like AMC, GME. They're trying to control DJT. But there can be surprises that shock the system. And that's a risk for our financial system. Finally, I guess I'll leave it on this. I know I'm leaving things out. But this means that 1 out of maybe 30 shares of stock that's in the electronic system, 1 out of 30, 1 out of 50 is real. How do you assign dividends? How do you assign votes? How do you assign corporate decisions? What happens? Because the thing is, they know no one, as long as there's no physical shares allowed, no one's going to ask for their shares all at once. All they have to do is put a black and white entry in a statement. Everyone trusts that. And make no mistake, they do this in bonds, in precious metals, probably in real estate, and they do it in stocks and companies. It's not fair. It's not fair. Why should 6 men have the right to all the juice? Why? They can buy it. They can buy the government. They can buy the regulators. They can buy the lawyers. They can buy the press. They buy Congress. That's why. So it's a choice, Mr. Trump, President Trump, and I do respect you. It's a choice. Is this the government we want? Is this the republic we want? Run by the banksters? Or should we have a level playing field? When FDR put Joe Kennedy in charge here, Joe Kennedy was one of the biggest promulgators of fraud through the stock pools. But FDR said, who's better to run it than the one that knows how to do it? It's time to make the SEC a cabinet level position, the chairmanship. So they sit at the table with the president in the cabinet, and you put everything together. FINRA, the options markets, derivatives, everything is under one cabinet person. It's also time to make the careers at the SEC mandatory, that it's a career position, not a two-year hitch. Probably you can't enforce that particularly, but what you can do, you can't sell your contacts, you can't sell your Rolodex for 20 years. That would put a stop to it. You get rid of the toxic convertible notes that make them illegal. You have full disclosure. You tell the managers of the retirement accounts around the world that her funds under management are all fraud, and she'll come after you. Are our markets really worth the trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars they say? Or in a collapse, will it snowball and we just end up in a complete round trip from 1982 from $1,000 Dow to 60,000 maybe in a blow-off that we might have? Do we get a complete round trip back to 1,000? Because it's all fraud. Why should clients have to put up cash at settlement? They can't buy when these guys can sell stock that doesn't exist. Why do you need high-frequency trading? Why does Ken Griffin need to buy another building? Is this the country you want? Imagine, and I recommend, I can't remember the website, but if you read about the Anson funds, in 1 year, in one bourse overseas, $27 trillion worth of these sales occurred and the money went offshore. Imagine if you tax that rather than give the profit to the handful of people who are richer than Zeus or Croesus. Imagine. You want a strong dollar? You want a strong U.S. economy? Bring back the American dream. Give rewards to the American worker and the American entrepreneur. And tax these plunderers. Tax their high-speed, high-frequency trading. Tax their offshore cheating. And tax their criminality. I think you could bring trillions. I would imagine you could pay for our entire national debt, which they won't let us pay off anyway. But maybe you bring it down to a manageable 5 trillion from 35 trillion, just by going after the criminals. It'll be painful, but why should we keep it this way? Why should we have a financial system that enriches a few white men? All right, thank you for listening. I wish everyone the best. I'd like to say I'm not normally this upset, but when I talk about this, I get upset because it's hurting real people. People are dying, families are dying, lives are ruined, retirements are ruined, people are losing homes, and it's just so unfair. And if some help could come from above and get this to someone that can actually gives a tinker's cuss, that would be great and can do something. So peace to everyone. I'll see you down the highway.